Samsung's Galaxy S20 FE 5G was a very interesting smartphone for me. For the price, I was deeply unimpressed with the regular Galaxy S20 line in Malaysia because of the subpar performance from the Exynos 990 processor, as well as the measly 128 gigs of internal storage. On the other hand, the S20 FE came with a lot of what makes the S20 line really good, but also a Snapdragon 865 processor, double the storage, and a fairly accessible price point of 3,399 ringgit. But if we're talking about new affordable flagship smartphones, we also have to talk about the brand new OnePlus 8T. Not only does this phone go blow for blow with the Galaxy S20 FE, but it's also a whole 400 ringgit more affordable. So, which smartphone do you buy? On the surface, this looks like a clear-cut victory for Team OnePlus, but having used both of these smartphones for about a week, I have to say that it's not quite that simple. You see, while I agree that the OnePlus 8T has the better value on paper, I also think that if you're looking for a complete, holistic flagship smartphone experience, you should be looking at the Galaxy S20 FE. But this is a comparison, right? So let's start with the first point. In this regard, these phones will trade blows all day. Both smartphones are powered by the Snapdragon 865 processor, which is a very capable flagship chip. The OnePlus edges out the S20 FE when it comes to RAM though, because this version comes with 12 gigs of RAM, while the S20 FE only packs 8 gigs of RAM. But they both feature 256 gigs of internal storage. The important thing for me here is the storage, because based on my daily routine and the kind of apps that I use on my smartphone, I didn't really notice a huge difference in performance between these two devices. That is to say that the S20 FE, I don't think that it was severely hampered for having slightly less RAM. More importantly is that if you are someone who needs a lot of storage, the S20 FE offers the option to expand storage via a micro SD card slot, while the OnePlus doesn't. Both phones will run pretty much everything a high-end flagship will, and it will do so with the same level of performance. Games, movies, multitasking, I had no issues with either. To keep the lights on, both devices come with 4,500 mAh batteries, and they offer excellent battery life. The capacity may not seem like much, but the processor and optimization must be excellent here, because both of these devices easily power me through a day with over 6 hours of screen on time, even with my screen set at 120 Hz. Sometimes it'll even last me a day and a half. Compared to the Exynos-powered Note 20 Ultra, which I was using last, which also has a 4,500 mAh battery cell, the Snapdragon-powered S20 FE almost doubles the screen time I got with the Ultra on the similar screen settings and usage. OnePlus equips their phone with 65-watt fast charging, while the S20 FE only supports 25-watt fast charging. To make matters worse, the S20 FE only comes bundled with a 15-watt fast charger in the box, so if you want to unlock the full potential of the S20 FE's fast charging, you'll have to buy a separate brick. That's not cool, Samsung. Now though, it's time to move on to the next main point, which is the display and speakers. Again, both devices are very evenly matched in this department, as they both come sporting really nice smartphone screens. The Samsung Galaxy S20 FE has a crisp 6.5-inch Full HD Plus Super AMOLED display, while the OnePlus has a touch bigger 6.55-inch Full HD Plus Fluid AMOLED display. Both panels offer a 120Hz refresh rate with the option to switch between that and regular 60Hz, so you can experience buttery fluidity or extend battery life by kicking it down to 60Hz. I gotta say though that battery life on these smartphones were more than good enough for me, so I left them both at 120Hz all the time. Being AMOLED screens, the panels also have excellent contrast, good brightness, and viewing angles. Playing content side by side, the OnePlus's display has a slight green tint to it that the Samsung panel doesn't, but I don't think that this is a deal breaker for most. Still, I will give the edge in terms of viewing experience to the S20 FE here, even if it's by a hair. What I did encounter on my S20 FE, however, was the touchscreen issues Samsung has been trying to fix. This would occasionally cause like random ghost touches and jittery movement when I was using the phone, which was very annoying. The upside here is that Samsung is aware of these problems and they have been pushing fixes and software updates to try and fix this issue, but whether or not this issue will persist remains to be seen. When it comes to speakers, I think the OnePlus has the slight edge here. Both have earpiece stereo speaker setups that sound pretty good. Not nearly as good as like the high-end stuff, but it's good enough for an enjoyable experience.
You know, we all kind of look like Nick on a Segway, and let me just tell you, that's not cool at all. But what if that Segway came with a go-kart? This is the 9-watt Go-Kart Pro. Let's take a look. So I mean, as you can tell by the box, this particular device has gone through quite a bit of a journey. It's a unit from China, so you know, it's not in English. All the menus and stuff are all in Chinese. Like even the top of the box, like you can see, it's all just Chinese words, which I cannot read. I know, banana.
That said, the S20 FE is ever so slightly softer than the 8T, especially when it comes to vocals. That's why I'm giving the 8T the edge here. And of course, this should come to nobody's surprise, neither of these smartphones have a 3.5mm headphone jack. Up until this point, both of these smartphones have been trading blows. And if both of them are so evenly matched, you know, why is there a 400 ringgit delta? Is it purely because of the Samsung badge tax? Well, not quite. Remember how I said that the S20 FE is the more complete flagship smartphone? Well, that starts with the camera. This is probably the biggest point of difference between the two smartphones. I always thought that the S20 FE would be a little bit better when it came to photography because of my preliminary testing, but I wasn't exactly sure like how. That is until I took a bunch of side-by-side shots. The S20 FE features a triple camera setup. It has a 12 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera, and an 8 megapixel telephoto camera, which gives it 3 times optical zoom. Both the wide and the telephoto have OIS, which is nice to see. On the other hand, the OnePlus 8T has a quad camera setup. There is a 48 megapixel wide-angle camera with OIS, a 16 megapixel ultra-wide camera, but the remaining two are rounded out by a macro and a monochrome camera. Those to me are like kind of pointless cameras, so I will be focusing on the wide and the ultra-wide. In daylight, both the Galaxy S20 FE and the OnePlus 8T are pretty evenly matched. In my opinion, it really depends on your preference. The OnePlus has more natural, true-to-life colors, while the S20 FE has the oversaturated look that you probably recognize from Samsung's flagships. However, the SE's images are far sharper and more detailed, but again, I know some people will find this look to be unnatural. Personally, I like the crispness of the S20 FE's photos, but I like the true-to-life colors of the OnePlus 8T. The FE also outperforms the 8T when it comes to zooming with better reach and way more detail. Both phones also have punch-hole cameras up front, with the S20 FE housing a 32 megapixel sensor, while the 8T gets a 16 megapixel shooter. That said, when things start getting dark, well, that's when things start to look really one-sided, with the S20 FE basically kicking the 8T's. I shot all of these images handheld with the phone's respective night mode settings on, and the difference was pretty shocking. In every scene, I thought the S20 FE consistently produced the better image. It had lower noise, more detail, and less noticeable sharpening. And the most obvious difference came in this scene. This was shot in a very dark room with just a little bit of light spilling in from the outside. At first glance, the OnePlus 8T's image looks way brighter, but when you look a little closer, you can see a massive lack of detail. At first I thought it was like because it was out of focus or there was some handshake blur or something like that, but it's not. When I dug a little deeper, what I found out was that the OnePlus 8T was using consistently higher ISO in all of their low-light photos. That last photo, for example, the S20 FE was on 2500 ISO, while the OnePlus 8T was on 25,000 ISO. So yeah, big win here for the S20 FE. Besides the main pillars of what makes a smartphone good, the higher up the price point you go, the more important some of the more minor quality of life features become. I like to call this the premium features, or like, the intangibles, the thing that really separates like a top of the line smartphone from like a bang for buck flagship device. And when it comes to these features, I think that the S20 FE has the more complete feature set. For starters, the S20 FE has IP68 dust and water resistance, while the OnePlus 8T doesn't. And while the S20 FE loses out in the fast wired charging war, the FE comes with wireless charging, unlike the 8T. Samsung can also leverage their ecosystem features like, Samsung Pay, which is something a company like OnePlus doesn't have access to. And when you add these up, they really make a difference when it comes to like the whole flagship smartphone experience. But of course, that's not to say that the OnePlus 8T doesn't have its own features that it does better than the S20 FE. The alert slider is still one of my favorite features, and that is still super useful on the OnePlus 8T. This phone also comes with Oxygen OS, which I definitely prefer over One UI. The 8T even has nicer haptics, taps feel like taps on the 8T, unlike on the FE. It's a very satisfying little difference that matters. Interestingly, and I really think Samsung dropped the ball on this one, the OnePlus 8T actually has a glass back, while the FE uses Samsung's glass stick, plastic made to feel like glass nonsense. Really, Samsung? This is a 3,399 ringgit smartphone and you couldn't even give me a glass back? I mean, sure, both of these smartphones still have like good builds, like they're really nicely put together with really nice clicky buttons and all, but just the fact that I now know that this isn't glass, that just doesn't feel good. Especially when, Samsung is so well known for their high quality build. Okay, now that we have everything out on the table, which smartphone should you buy? I'll be honest, I didn't expect it to be this close. I thought like the OnePlus 8T would just like blow the FE right out of the water. But okay, but I think it just boils down to two things. Number one, do you need a complete flagship smartphone experience? And number two, can you afford the 400 ringgit price difference? If your answer is yes to both, then I would go for the S20 FE. It's a very complete package, and I'd even say that it is the only S20 you should buy this year, and that is no small feat. It's great across the board when it comes to performance, battery life, camera, and build, even despite the plastic back. So when you pair that with the high-end premium features it inherits from its more expensive brethren, I can start to see where the 400 ringgit is going, and that makes it a great Samsung flagship to pick up for the price. But if you're more like me, well, I'd rather buy the OnePlus 8T. You see, I don't need a super awesome camera. If my goal is to take photos, I'd whip out my camera. And for most of the times I don't have my camera, I think that the 8T's camera is more than good enough for what I need. Stuff like taking photos of groceries, telling people their food is here, the usual stuff. I'll probably be most sad to lose the water resistance from the Galaxy S20 FE, but I don't think that alone is enough to get me to spend 400 ringgit more, because I can live with all the other limitations. So yeah, that's what I think about these two smartphones and which one you should buy. What do you think? Do you think that I'm completely wrong? Do you disagree? Do you own any of these smartphones? Whatever it is, I want to hear all your thoughts in the comments section below. But yeah, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to like. Liking is thumbs up, right? Okay, subscribe to our YouTube channel, click on the notification bell icon, and we're also on Facebook. You can join our Facebook group, RKMD, and you can follow us there. But our home on the internet will always be at soyachinchao.com. Again, if you want to see more comparison videos, or if you have devices that you want me to compare, make sure you let me know in the comment section below too. I also don't have a name for this show series thing, so if you have like name suggestions for this series, you can leave them down below too. Alright, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.